What's up, YouTube? Scott here with the Carrera Cafe. Behind me is my 2016 Lexus LX570. If you've been following along on the channel, you'll know that I purchased this about 5 months ago. I just passed 5,000 miles during my ownership, so I thought that'd be a good opportunity to bring you guys a video on kind of my initial thoughts versus what I've learned now and kind of what the last 5,000 miles of ownership and the experience has looked like. If you're in the market for an LX570, hopefully I can show you some things that might help sway your decision. If you already own an LX570, maybe I can teach you some things about the vehicle you already own. My channel is primarily about Porsche ownership and general car enthusiast type content. However, I do always have some type of daily driver, and currently it is this Lexus LX570. I do plan on bringing you guys a video comparing the LX570 to the GX460 that my wife drives, which is another body-on-frame, naturally aspirated V8 Lexus Toyota product, but just slightly smaller, and it's probably a vehicle you should consider if you're looking at one of these, and I'll help decide if it's a fit for you or not. With that, let's get behind the wheel, and I'll kind of give you guys my thoughts and what I've learned about this vehicle during the last 5,000 miles. So let me start by saying you can't go wrong with an LX. I've owned 40 different vehicles during my lifetime, ranging all across the board from different German vehicles, Japanese, a handful of American, but primarily German and Japanese vehicles. You can't go wrong with an LX, but there are some sacrifices that you make when selecting this when compared to other modern SUVs of that generation. If you're looking for more of a why should you buy an LX video, I think my initial purchase video is probably a better fit for you, and I'll put a link in the description below for that. This video is kind of summarizing the first 6,000 miles of ownership for me because I've learned some. There's things about this vehicle that I didn't know when I purchased it, even though I did research pretty heavily. So the first thing I want to mention is, so this car comes standard with AHC, which is automatic height control. Just think of that as like adaptive suspension, but it is hydraulic versus air, so it is fairly reliable. One of the reasons I landed on this vehicle is obviously the off-road capability. So I intended to put a larger set of wheels and tires on it with a focus on off-road, which I did do. I've put a set of 17-inch wheels with some nice 33.5-inch tires, and I do really like the driving experience. But what I learned is you can do what's called a sensor lift, which is essentially adjusting the tolerances on all four corners with just a 10-millimeter bolt. You can do it right in your driveway, and it increases each height setting about an inch. You know, I'm sure there is some unnecessary wear and tear on some components by doing so, but I pick up an extra inch of clearance while maintaining the adaptive suspension, which was important to me. There's a ton of guides out there on YouTube if you just search sensor lift. I don't plan on making one because it's so straightforward, but essentially you're just loosening a 10-millimeter bolt and adjusting the tolerance, and it increases the lift in all the ride settings. I don't get any air lights or anything in the dash, and so far it's been a good experience. The other thing that I'm pleased to see is it's just easy to work on. To my surprise, I bought this vehicle with 80,000 miles. Shortly after my ownership, I did start to get some driveline belt chirping. So I did do the drive belt, idler, and pulley, and I just did it in my driveway, bought parts from my local Lexus dealer, and of course they're Toyota parts, and it was really easy to work on. So I'm pleased that this car is easy to work on if you are mechanically inclined. You know, there was plenty of room to work. I did give myself a nice scar on the fan blade, but other than that, it was probably an hour-and-a-half job. I think if somebody is more mechanically inclined, it'd be an even easier job, but again, I'm pleased to see that it's an easy to work on vehicle. Now, one of the things that I'm surprised about is when I was searching for this LX, I really wanted the factory rear entertainment. So that's 2 screens in the rear with some kind of audio video inputs in the center console back in the rear. And I don't have kids currently, but I do plan to grow a family at some point. It'd be nice to have something on the screen back there that's not an iPad with, you know, limitless options. So I was only looking at LXs with rear entertainment. So I did limit my search some, but I was fortunate enough to find one. What I did not know is Toyota and Lexus's second row folding seat design situation. The second row in this vehicle folds forward. If you've looked at these vehicles, you'll know that the cargo situation is a little weird because they wanted to allow room for a third row, but also a full-size spare underneath, so the seats don't really fold for a flat cargo floor. And neither does the second row, but it folds forward up into the driver and passenger seat. Well, that's where the rear infotainment screens are. So if you're not paying attention, somebody will flip your seats forward and smack your screen. And it can, of course, damage those screens. Well, I didn't think about turning the screens on before purchasing the vehicle, and it turns out my passenger screen is damaged. It doesn't look like it while it's off, but once you turn it on, you can see the lines in it, and it's not usable. My driver one's fine, but the passenger is not. No big deal, just get online and find a replacement. Well, that's where things get interesting. These rear screens used on eBay, I'm not making this up, they range from $5,000 to $7,500 for a used replacement. Just the screen. One screen. I contacted my Lexus dealer and they agreed that was about the same dollar amount. So I have found a couple alternatives. I did find that there is a company you can send your screen out to and they'll just replace the panel for about $1,000. But then I also found a company that just does rear entertainment deletes. It's like a little plate that you can put in place of where the screen is, and then you just mount an iPad or whatever you'd like to use instead. So unfortunately, that's probably what I'm gonna do, is just forego the rear infotainment. But the reason I bring this up is when you go test drive an LX, turn the screens on, make sure they work. Even if you don't want the screens, you could use it as a negotiation tactic. You could turn the screen on and say, hey guys, you know what? I like the car, but the screen needs to be fixed before, to finalize the purchase. And a dealer who's not, doesn't know the cost of it will say, oh yeah, we'll replace the screen and we'll finalize the deal. Well, they'll quickly get into it and find it's a $7,500 part. And now you've got some negotiating room. So if the rear infotainment is important to you, turn them on during your test drive, because I did not, and now I'm paying for it. So the other item that I've learned, so this is a facelift LX570, so 2016 to 2021. They did a lot of technology upgrades, but one of the major mechanical upgrades that was done is they went from the 6-speed transmission to the 8-speed transmission. Now, I do like the 8-speed. My wife's GX460 has the 6-speed, and I do feel like it has to shift and kind of hunt for gears when you're driving down the highway in cruise control doing 60 or 70 with some uphill and descending. I feel like this car does that better because of the 8-speed. However, when I got this car, it shifted pretty hard from first to second and second to third. And the roughness of that shift would correlate to, is the vehicle cold and how much am I accelerating? If I kept the car under 2,000 RPMs, the shifts were buttery smooth. But as soon as I started to get into it, the shifts were pretty hard. And I kind of just wrote this off initially, thinking, hey, I'm probably making it a bigger deal than it is, because I've come from some German vehicles that have, pretty smooth ZF transmissions that do very well in different speeds and torque. So I wrote it off. But over the first month or two, it started to really bother me. So I did a little research, and it turns out that there is a TSB, a technical service bulletin, for the first 2 years of the LX570. I think this applies to the first 2 years of the facelift on the Land Cruiser as well. So this would be 2016 and 2017. I think they fixed it in 2018. But essentially, there was reports of hard shifts from first, second, and third. The TSB only goes up to 80,000 miles. So if you're outside 80,000 miles, you will come out of pocket for this repair, which I was just above 80, so I did have to pay for it. But it only ended up costing about $100. So I went into my local Lexus dealer, I had the TSB printed off, which I'll link in the description. And it's just a software refresh. So I don't know if it adjusts timing or pressure on certain driveline components in the transmission, but it shifts buttery smooth now from first to second and third. And all it was a software update that was done at the dealer. So again, I'll link that TSB. If your LX or Land Cruiser is shifting hard between first, second, and third, stroll on in and try this software refresh. Certainly the next thing you'd probably try is different fluids, maybe the differential fluids or transfer case fluids, but do the software, and for me that fixed it, and now it shifts a lot better and I'm much happier with the driving experience. I am a little disappointed that the prior owner drove this car 80,000 miles with those harder transmission shifts. It probably put unnecessary wear on things, but what's done is done. So do yourself a favor, grab that TSB and go do that software update if your LX is shifting harder than it should be. The other thing I was a little surprised at in this vehicle for its original price point, and some of this could be more specific to my vehicle, but when I was shopping, it did kind of seem like a pretty common trend, is the leather wear. This vehicle's got 80,000 miles, which is, you know, not a ton of seat time, but it is quite a bit of seat time. And the leather is just not held up in this vehicle very well. It started to lose its color. It's starting to crack. And when I say that, I'm comparing it to other vehicles I've owned of similar age and miles. If you were to get in this vehicle and look at the seats, and again, this could just be mine taking more abuse than it should, but the leather's pretty worn. And I saw a lot of that when I was searching for these, definitely in the lighter colors. So it's nice, soft, comfortable leather, and I'm sure I could do a re-dye, and then over time that would probably wear again too. But I was a little disappointed in how the leather holds up in this vehicle, because everything else is really designed to last 30, 40 years mechanically. This thing's going to rust, and the leather will fall apart before anything mechanically massive goes wrong with it. So a little disappointed in the leather wear, but again, not the end of the world. The other thing that I don't love, and again, this is just me being picky, is during my search, again, one of the very few options other than rear entertainment was I really wanted Mark Levinson, which is the upgraded stereo with additional speakers and a subwoofer, because I'm kind of an audio snob. You know, I've come from a lot of German vehicles with Harman Kardon and Bowers and Wilkins and some of these really big known brands. So the Mark Levinson was important to me. And it's not a, you know, I'd give it a 6 or a 7 on the stereo scale. It's plenty good. You'll be happy with it. But like any Toyota or Lexus product I've owned, is when you get the better stereo, the stereo outperforms the interior build quality. What I mean by that is if you listen to music like I do, that's got bass, it creates rattles. I mean, this vehicle has door panel rattles, and I'm kind of always holding things down. And it's from the stereo. When I have the radio off, it's dead silent in here. There's no rattles. But if I'm listening to the radio at, you know, half volume, there might be some rattles here and there. And that's just something you're going to trade off when you're looking at a Toyota or Lexus product of this era when compared to maybe a Mercedes or a BMW that's put together a little bit differently in terms of insulation and how components fit together. So in my opinion, and I've felt this in my Tundra TRD Pro as well, and my wife's GX, that the stereo outperforms the interior's build quality. But again, it's not the end of the world. It's a small trade-off when you get so many other great things in here. So the last item that I was just really kind of surprised to see is how much little attention this vehicle gets from car enthusiasts. I was truly thinking that you'd get the nods and thumbs up from 4Runner owners, Tacoma owners, Land Cruiser owners. I don't know if it's just the people that own these, or maybe people don't know what they are, but this vehicle gets zero attention. I've had nobody say, hey, wow, it's a great looking Land Cruiser or Lexus, which is kind of odd. The attention it does get, to my surprise, is from non-car people. If you look at the production numbers, and I don't have the production numbers offhand, but the LX was not produced nearly as much as a 4Runner or a GX or some of the more common SUVs like Tahoes and Yukons and Escalades. So when non-car people see this LX, they take a second look at it and they're like, huh, I don't know that I've ever seen one of those before. I don't think this vehicle is wildly successful when it was originally being produced brand new, at least this generation, because of some of the things that dated it at that time that make it valuable today. So non-car enthusiasts look at this car and like, huh, I've never seen that before, because there's just not that many of them. I'd say for every 10 GXs I see on the road here in the Midwest, I see one LX. So it gets attention from non-car people, which was a little bit of a surprise. So with that kind of summarizes my 6,000 mile ownership update. I do plan to bring you guys a comparison to a GX460. So my wife has a GX460, which has a lot of similarities, but I've put together a list of about 25 things that actually are different between these vehicles. So if you're considering purchasing a GX or an LX, I've got a video coming out that's going to really do a deep dive comparison. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please follow along and subscribe, and I look forward to bringing you guys more content. Thanks.